in the thousands of talks I give all over the place, I've found myself kind of reluctantly giving talks about endangered species, meaning by that things like democracy, human rights, socioeconomic development, others. But the prime one, unfortunately, is human beings. The best way to control people is by fear. Violence will probably terminate the species. If violence is among 2-year-olds, it's a bad thing. You try to stop it. But when it involves nuclear weapons on automated response systems with a 2-minute period of human intervention, if the computer tells you there's a missile strike, then violence can be terminal violence. That's the principle of universality, meaning if some act is right for me, then it's right for others. If it's wrong for them, it's wrong for me. If you can't accept that principle, you should have the decency to shut up. Quite commonly, the term terrorism is used by someone for the terrorism that they carry out against us, not the terrorism that we carry out against them. Everyone's worried about stopping terrorism. Well, it's a really easy way. Stop participating in it. I mean, that alone will reduce the amount of terrorism in the world by an enormous quantity. It's often argued that the term terrorism is very hard to define. Actually, it's no harder to define than any other term in ordinary political usage. But this one is hard to define because when you take the official definitions, and you apply them literally, it follows that you're a terrorist. And that can't be accepted. It's if they do something to us that the world is coming to an end. But if we do it to them, it's so normal, why should we even talk about it? The phrase war on terrorism should always be used in quotes, because there can't possibly be a war on terrorism. It's led by the only state in the world which has been condemned by the highest international authorities for international terrorism, namely the World Court, the Security Council, except that the U.S. vetoed the resolution. The Reagan administration, pretty much the people now in office, declared a war on terror. They didn't declare it on September 11th, they declared it in 1981. The focus of U.S. foreign policy is going to be war on terror. It quickly turned into a terrorist war. They destroyed Central America and half of the rest of the world. After September 11th, some of the press, particularly the Wall Street Journal, began investigating opinion in the region. They were trying to find out the answer to George Bush's plaintive question, why do they hate us when we're so good? I used the official U.S. government definition of terrorism, which totally enrages people. Because if you take the official definition, it follows right away that terrorism is official U.S. government policy and that the U.S. is a leading terrorist state. If you don't do what we tell you, you'll just be pulverized. We don't care what you think or what you say. That's their attitude. What's unusual in this case is very brazen announcement that we're going to dominate the world by force if necessary. We'll have the capacity to do it.
The strategy report quite explicitly declares the most powerful state in history to maintain dominance over the world, the use of military force, one dimension in which it ranks supreme.
One obvious consequence of aggressiveness and militancy of the Bush administration, the Russians are going to respond, and the Chinese are going to respond, and others will respond. You say, we're going to destroy you. People don't say thanks.
The official formulation is our forces will be strong enough to dissuade potential adversaries from pursuing a military in hopes of surpassing or equaling the power of the United States.
The Russians very prominently carried out their biggest military maneuvers in 2 decades. Advanced offensive weapons, some of the most sophisticated and destructive missiles in the world, aimed at the United States. They've adopted Bush's first strike doctrine. They've placed these forces on automated response. It's a huge threat to us. Our systems are vastly more sophisticated than theirs.
The grand strategy begins with a fundamental commitment to maintaining a unipolar world in which the United States has no peer competitor, a condition that is to be permanent so that no state or coalition could ever challenge the United States as global leader, protector, and enforcer.
When we say we're going to attack anyone we want without credible evidence, we mean proof. We're going to attack Iraq without credible evidence, and they don't have any, and they didn't have anything.
They are carrying out a major assault against the general population. They know it, people know it. You got to divert attention away from the only way that anyone's ever figured out is fear.
Just pull a couple of lines out of standard children's stories or ancient epics about how an evil monster is coming to destroy you. It was Libyan hitmen coming to assassinate the brave cowboy in the White House. Different cowboy that year later. It was an air base in Grenada from which Russians were going to bomb us. There's a constant effort that's been going on almost 25 years, and there were domestic threats like Hispanic narco-traffickers and black criminals. You'll recall George Bush #1 managed to gain office in 1988 by waving the race card on that issue. The latest ones are Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda.
The frightened population does tend to huddle under the umbrella of power.
Right at this moment, government policy is purposely creating a fiscal crisis. They call it fiscal crisis of the state, in order to have a way of wiping out all the social programs of the past century and imposing a huge debt on future populations.
Bush administration economists have just released a study showing an anticipated $44 trillion deficit, which will be a fiscal train wreck. It was supposed to go into the budget last February, but they kept it out because they didn't want people to know about it when they're trying to push through another tax cut for the rich. They want a fiscal train wreck. If you have a fiscal train wreck, you have to have what's called fiscal responsibility. Cut back spending, not cut back spending that goes into the pockets of rich people, but cut back on social spending. Eliminate Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, funding for the states so that they'll have huge deficits, eliminate public schools and so on. Just roll back any of the progressive legislation of the past century. It's got to be conscious, and there's no way that they could be doing this without understanding it.
Huge deficits. They're being funded so far by lending from abroad, Asia, Europe. How long that'll go on, nobody knows. The effect would be of a crunch, nobody knows. There could also be an energy crisis ahead. Nobody knows for sure, but sooner or later, oil production is going to peak, maybe soon, and start to decline and get more expensive. And what the effect will that be on a country like this that is wasteful in energy use? U.S. probably spends as much as roughly the rest of the world combined on military force, and way more technologically advanced, and on to futuristic systems which are very frightening and hazardous. The Space Command announced its plans would be shifted from control of space to ownership of space. They explain in detail setting up platforms in space for highly destructive offensive weapons. It'll undoubtedly include nuclear weapons. Globalization will lead to widening economic divide, stagnation, increase in alienation, agitation, violence. Well, that's why we need offensive military capacities from space. A growing number of have-nots will be doing things we don't like, maybe developing weapons of mass destruction or something else, maybe terror. We better have advanced force capacities to take care of purpose behind. U.S. planners want to have the capacity to attack and destroy any part of the world instantly, without warning, and without reliance on forward bases. That's an extreme form of the goal of hegemony. Are there ways of stopping it? Sure thing. We're not living in Turkey, Colombia, Equatorial Guinea. We're living for society. It's very important, I think, to get these people out of office. They have an extremely narrow hold on power. It's very fragile. With another mandate, they could do severe, maybe even irreversible damage. People who achieved things knew that you don't do it by one demonstration. You want changes, you don't have to work day after day. Some things will fail. Do more of a build up from where you were last time. That's the way things. Freedom isn't a gift from anyone. It was won by centuries of struggle, but we enjoy it. We can use it. These are the deep abysses into which we ought to be peering. The good side of the story, there's been a constant improvement. Places just a lot more civilized. It continues a historical course, a long struggle to attain more rights, more democratic control, and it's continuing and probably accelerating. And it's a tendency running counter to the tendency towards destruction. And exactly which curve is going to move up faster will determine the fate of the species. That question is pretty much in the hands of people like you. First question, obviously, is whether what I'm saying is correct. Second question, is it the radical left? Almost everything I've said here is the opinion of a considerable majority of the American population. When I say I think we should have a sensible healthcare system, that's speaking for the majority. Yes, it's politically impossible, but that doesn't make it radically left. It's a problem about the nature of the way the system's function. It is functioning as a failed state. The population cannot enter the political arena, can't even get information. The democratic system is formally there. You can push a button, but it's not functioning in a serious way. That's a radical left position, and it's a very conservative position.